Hello my guys, today we are talking about the 18 series that I have either started or made progress on in 2025. However, I have not finished them. Some of these series are completed, published in their entirety. Some of them are still ongoing, but they all have one thing in common, and that is that there are books out there in this series, books that have been published that I have not read, and I really need to change that. So this, I'm pretty sure, is the final video in my mid-year content. If you have missed it, the last video that went up on my channel should have been the first part of this mid-year series check-in, where I talk about all of the series that I've DNF'd so far this year, the ones that I've completed, and the ones that I'm up to date on. The majority of that video is actually DNF, so I'm very sad to say that in terms of series that I've actually made a lot of progress on and caught up with this year, they're very thin on the ground, and we're actually going to be talking about 5 more series in this video than we did at this time last year, which is not a good thing because I want to be telling you about more books in the first part of the mid-year series check-in, like more series that I've completed in some way and less series that I'm currently working on. So the majority of these are series that I have just started. I've read the first book and I have not continued on yet. I have identified in a couple of recent videos that I've noticed that what I'm currently doing is reading the first book in a lot of series, deciding which ones I want to keep and continue on with, unhauling and DNFing the rest of them, and then eventually when the whole series has been published, I'm circling back around to the ones that I started and really enjoyed and continuing on with those. I mean, it's not ideal, it's not the most efficient way to read series, and it's not the most productive use of my time, but what it is doing is it's making sure that the ones that I'm continuing on with are the ones that I actually want to, because I'm leaving time between the first book and the next book in the series, and that kind of weeds out the ones that I'm not as excited about because I end up forgetting about them or I'm not enthusiastic about them, and the ones that I'm continuing on with are the ones that I'm genuinely passionate about. So in terms of the 18 series that we're going to be talking about today, some of them will probably make the cut list at some point. I know there are a couple on here that I'm a little more lukewarm on than others, and there is actually a series that should have been in this video that I have removed because since I read the first book a couple of months ago, I've now decided that I don't want to continue, which you guys will hear about in the series check-in that comes at the end of 2025. So I don't plan on talking about these books in any particular order, but I have separated them into 2 piles, and those are series that are complete and series that are still publishing. So the ones that are complete, I need to finish. The ones that are still publishing, I ideally would need to catch up on, but I'm going to start with the completed ones because they are the most important. And something that I am trying to do as well is when I'm circling back around to actually reading these series in full, I'm trying to do it when they're completed so that it doesn't get to a point where there's too long in between the last book that I read and the next book coming out that I do lose interest. So the first one we're going to talk about is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. This one is quite a recent read for me, and it is a young adult favorite series, like a booktube staple. This one is following 2 sisters who have an abusive father, and the main sister that we follow in this book is Scarlet, and she has been writing to the Master of Caraval legend for years. Now Caraval is this carnival, this like interactive game that travels around the world. However, it hasn't traveled for a little while, and Scarlet's requests for Caraval to come to her island have widely gone unanswered. But one year, just before she's about to get married, she receives a letter from Legend inviting her to participate in Caraval on his private island. So she goes there with her sister. They have a third invitation that they give to a sailor who helps them get to Legend's private island, and as soon as she arrives, her sister Tella is kidnapped, and she originally intended to just observe the game of Caraval, not to participate in it anyway, but when her sister goes missing, she discovers that she is going to have to play this game and win the competition to be able to get her sister back. I did enjoy this one. I really liked the writing style. It felt very reminiscent to me of Marissa Meyer. There were things that I didn't love about it, like circus stories tend to contain a little bit more whimsy than I typically enjoy in fantasy, but there was something about the pacing, the plot, and the imaginative nature of this book that made me want to continue on. And I've also heard good things about the spin-off series as well, which I eventually also intend to get to. This year I also started the Fallen Gods series by Hannah Kaner. Now at the time that you are watching this, I have already read book 2. However, I did not manage to get it in the first half of the year, so for the purpose of this video, I have just read the first book, Godkiller. But this one is a lush, atmospheric adult fantasy fantasy series that is very rich in world building, set in this world where gods are plentiful, and the more you worship a god, the more real it becomes. Now, this became a problem for the world because the gods have incredible power, and so the prince of the kingdom came and he banished as many gods as he could. He destroyed all of their shrines and he made it forbidden to worship. Now, his best friend, who is a knight, does not agree with this. However, he went along with it because he believed in the reasons behind the king's actions, and he has since retired from being a knight and he's now a baker. However, he has to pick up his sword once more and travel to this ransacked city where the god worship was the most prevalent to try and help out his friend the king, who has a health issue that can only be resolved by Elo seeking out a god. We're also following a god killer in here called Kissen, whose trade used to be forbidden. Like, to be a god killer used to be a bad thing, but since this world has changed, Kissen's services are highly sought after. And one day she meets a child who is tethered to a god, which is something that shouldn't happen. Gods should only be tethered to shrines, and Kissen's conscience compels her to accompany this child to the same city that Elo is going to see if they can find a way to separate the child from the god. And through the course of their journey towards this city, they all end up meeting up and traveling together as their paths and storylines converge. My favorite thing about this series is the writing style and the atmosphere. These are quite short books, but I don't feel like atmosphere and world building suffer for that. They could be a little bit longer and they could delve into some of the concepts of this world a little bit deeper for my personal taste, but I was very pleasantly surprised by how rich this world is given the page count of these books. One that I was very surprised by is This Poison Heart by Kaylin Bayron. This one is just a duology and I read it quite recently. I am hoping to read the sequel quite soon because I think if it comes to a point where I have to reread this one, I'm probably not going to, even though I very much enjoyed it. It was one of my favorite books of June. But this one is a young adult fantasy set in New York State, and it is following a girl with adoptive parents who is from Brooklyn. Her family are currently struggling to make ends meet because the rent keeps going up on the flower shop that they run, as well as the apartment that they live in above it. So our main character, who actually has this magical ability that causes plants and nature to bend towards her, has been helping in the flower shop to help out her family. One day, a woman comes to their house and tells our main character that she has received an estate from an aunt who has died. Without knowing what this is, whether it's a box of junk or a crumbling manor, our main character Brie and her family head upstate to explore, and when they're there, they do indeed find this sprawling mansion with an apothecary inside it, and upon exploring the gardens, Brie discovers not only a series of greenhouses that are intended to stock the apothecary, but also a poison garden behind it. And as the book goes on, she discovers that this house, this family, and this apothecary have been providing a very essential service to the community for generations. There were things that I did not love about this book. I thought that the dialogue could be a little bit cheesy in parts and the ending was a little bit chaotic, but I actually really loved how immersive this was, which I wasn't expecting from a contemporary young adult fantasy. We also had a little bit of Greek mythology woven through here as well, which forms the basis of the magic in this world that I think we're going to explore a little bit more in book 2. A contemporary romance that I really loved was The Deal by Elle Kennedy. This was also one of my favorite books of the year so far. If you haven't checked out that video, then I definitely would recommend it, of course. But this one is the first book in a series of hockey romances. Now, I did actually get halfway through book 2 in this series, and I didn't put it down because I didn't want to read it. I just didn't have time, and I was trying to read it because I wanted to, but I had other priorities. So I am hoping to carry on in this series very soon, and actually I'm feeling like an itch to kind of get back to this series and this kind of story, so it could be happening very soon. But this is the first book in a series of hockey romances. I think it's 4 or 5 books in total, but I know there's at least one, maybe more spin-off series from this as well. But this one is following Hannah, who has a crush on a football player, and she doesn't really know how to get this guy's attention. And Garrett Graham, who is one of the college's star hockey players, notices her interest and offers her a deal. The deal is that he will fake date her to get her on this guy's radar, get her some popularity under her belt so she's a little more noticeable. And in exchange, he wants Hannah to tutor him in a class that he's failing. So Hannah is resistant for a while, but eventually she relents, and these two start to grow closer throughout the course of their tutoring and fake dating experience. This one has one of my favorite tropes, which is the he falls first trope, and it was one of the only contemporary romances romances I've read in a very long time where I was actually invested in the romantic relationship as opposed to just like the writing style or some other small element that was not obviously the main focus of the romance, which obviously is the romantic relationship itself. For an episode of Shelve It or Scrap It, I read the third book in the Chorus of Dragons series by Jen Lyon. So I read the first two books, I think like 4 years ago now, and I picked up the third book expecting to DNF this series because it's quite a thick adult epic fantasy series that is very chaotic and very fast paced. So I was like, there is absolutely no way I'm going to be able to get into book 3, but I actually did manage to. So this is a 5-book series. I read just book 3 in 2025 and I have 2 books to read. I do own book 4. I haven't picked up book 5 yet, but I will eventually if I do continue to carry on, because this is a series that continually frustrates me, but I also kind of have a good time while I'm reading it. The unique selling point of this series is the way it's narrated, because this first book is about a boy called Kieran who is destined to either save the world or break it. And the first book is told in 3 timelines. So we have the present day where Kieran has been arrested and he is imprisoned with a monster, and the monster asks Kieran to tell her a story. So he asked what kind of story she'd like to hear, and she would like to hear his life story. So he begins at a point where he believes his life got interesting, and in chapter 2 the monster stops him and she says, no, your story actually starts here. And then she starts from like the beginning of his life and tells the story of his parents and like his early years until eventually all of the timelines converge. There's just something about this series that I do enjoy, and honestly I cannot even tell you what it is. I can't really tell you one positive thing about this series. I guess I like that the world is so complex and expansive, but in execution this series kind of relies on Jen Lyons to continuously remind you of what is going on, because it is very, very convoluted. Like everybody is reincarnated from these figures that were influential in the world, like in the history of the world, but then there's also body swapping in here, so people are related to each other and then they're in romantic relationships with each other, or like the being that they're reincarnated into is related to this character that's immortal that they're now in a relationship with, but it's not incest because they're in a different body, and all of that kind of like weird stuff where Jen Lyons has to continuously remind you what is going on. Now I will say the reminders are incredibly helpful because I had no problem getting back into this series after taking a 4-year break from it, but it has a lot of things that happen just because, where I like a harder magic system, harder world building. I like things to have rules and rhyme and reason, and this is like a chaotic queer wheel of time. So if that sounds interesting to you, check it out, but sometimes it's a little bit much for me. I am currently reading the Pretty Little Liars series by Sarah Shepard as well. This is my guilty pleasure. This is a series of young adult mysteries that are surrounding a group of girls whose friend went missing, and that girl was the glue that held this group together. So since she's been missing, these girls have drifted apart. However, they are brought back together when they all start to receive anonymous text messages threatening and blackmailing them. So they try to get to the bottom of who is responsible. Now, the first 8 books in this series form a complete story arc. That is where the series was intended to end. And then the latter 8 books were picked up afterwards, and they feel very like Monster of the Week. Like every book we have a new suspect, and it doesn't seem to be adding up to much. So at this point, I am 12 books into this series. I've read 3 this year. I should, however, be 15 books into this series, so I'm going to try and read a couple back to back or like rapid fire to catch up, because I've made it 12 books into this series. I may as well finish the final 12. They're still very easy to read. They're very nostalgic to me as somebody who grew up in the, well, I was like a teenager in the late 2000s through to the like 2010s, and they remind me of a lot of media that was presented to teenage girls in that time period from like 2005 to 2015. So I love the nostalgia factor, even though it is a little bit problematic, and they're just like quick, entertaining, and easy to read. I am currently reading the Lady of Darkness series with my patrons. So this one is a 5-book romantasy series, and I think I just read book 1. Yeah, book 1 I read last year, and I've read books 2 and 3 in 2025. I am going to be reading, maybe by the time you've seen this, I will have read book 4 because I should have done, and then I will very shortly be going into book 5 as well and finishing this one out. But this one one is following a very dangerous and lethal assassin. It's very similar to Throne of Glass, and she has left the Assassin's Guild. She is grieving for a friend that died, so she's taking a break from her work, but the Assassin Lord tempts her back into the fold by offering her a job that she cannot refuse, which upon its completion will gain her revenge on the Fae Fire Prince that was responsible for the death of her mother. Obviously, things don't go to plan. We have Fae in here, and the series branches out to explore the Fae lands as well as the magic and the history of this world, which is a little bit more complex than originally laid out. Like Throne of Glass, it starts off very small, not very much magic, and it gets bigger and bigger with every book. But for me, I am like semi-enjoying this series. It has a writing style that's nostalgic to me, that's very common in like indie self-pub fantasy romance, because this was indie before it was picked up by the publisher. And I don't think they've done a great deal of editing on it. It's not terrible by any means, but it is pretty much a mashup of every Sarah J Maas book that has ever existed. Book 1 is very Throne of Glass. The Throne of Glass comparisons continue throughout the series, but in book 2 we pick up a Court of Mist and Fury, and in book 3 we add a little splash of Crescent City in there as well. So it's not the most original thing that I've ever read. I also find the main character insufferable, but I'm having an okay time with it. My current catch-up book club series is The Faithful and the Fallen by Jung Gwyn, and I've currently read 3 books in this series, although I'm pretty sure the next thing going up on my channel is going to be our live discussion for book 4, which will wrap up the first part of this round of catch-up book club before we go into the second part of his Banished Lands world. But this one is a large cast adult epic fantasy that centers around a prophecy that originated from the time of giants. This prophecy states that the Black Sun and the Bright Star are going to rise, and the people of the world, the nations, are all going to split in two to rally behind these 2 avatars of the gods. We do follow a variety of characters in here. We do potentially follow the Bright Star and the Black Sun, however they have no idea who they are, and for the longest time we're kind of puzzling out who they are and what role they play in this prophecy as well. We also follow some people who are orchestrating the prophecy, trying to put things into motion, but also who have known about it for much longer than anybody else, people who are working on nefarious plans in the background, and then people who have just generally gotten swept up in the chaos of this world falling apart as this prophecy comes to the forefront. I really enjoy this series. At this point, I would not say that Jung Gwyn is one of my all-time favorite epic fantasy authors. I've had a very good time with this series so far. I've given 2 of the books 4 stars, 1 book 5 stars, so definitely very strong and solid, and I would recommend it. But I'm hoping that as I read more from Jung Gwyn, because he does have another trilogy that is not associated with the Banished Lands, that as his writing grows in strength, that my love for his work also grows as well. I also started another young adult fantasy staple, which is the Remnant Chronicles by Mary E. Pearson. This has been one that I've wanted to read for a very long time. It has been hyped since I started on BookTube, which was 8 years ago now, and this one is following a princess who runs away from her wedding on her wedding day. She leaves with her handmaid and they go to a neighboring town to start a new life for themselves, and 2 people set out after them. One of them is an assassin from an enemy kingdom who is going to try to kill our main character, and the other one is the prince that she was supposed to marry. Now, throughout the course of this book, she knows these men, but she does not know that they are an assassin and a prince. They also don't know who each other are, and us as readers, while we know one is an assassin and one is a prince, we don't know which one is which until later in the book as the plot starts to unfold. I probably did not enjoy this one as much as I would have liked to, given how long that I put it on a pedestal, but I still had a very good time with it. From a nostalgic point of view, I really enjoyed the love triangle that we had in here, and the magic of this world seems to be quite different from the way that the main character has been taught her entire life, and the history of the world seems to have been manipulated. So I'm very excited to see how that unfolds in the later books. One that I felt very mid about, but I'm opening to continuing, is the Twisted Love series, or the Twisted series I think it's called, by Anna Huang. So I read the first book, I gave it 3 stars. This is an instance of where I really enjoyed Anna Huang's writing style, but I did not care for the relationship at all. This one is a contemporary romance following a girl who is in the late stages of college, and her brother is the person who she depends on most in the world. He is her closest family member. Her mother has died. She doesn't have the best relationship with her father, and when her brother moves to Central America for a year, he asks his best friend Alex to look after his sister, just check in on her, keep an eye on her. And he takes this role very, very seriously, which is where he becomes controlling and overbearing, telling the main character that she cannot do things and stepping in on her behalf when she is doing things that are perfectly safe, that she has deemed as something that she would like to do. The thing that kept me hooked in this book though, because I actually almost DNF'd halfway through, is that the plot becomes very dramatic and soap opera like the more you get into it, with plot twists that I wasn't expecting because I didn't know we were even going to have any plot twists in here. But there is like an added element to it because the main character's mother died, but she also did try to kill her when she was a child. And the love interest, Alex, is currently working on a revenge mission to take down the person who was responsible for the death of his parents. So I liked the writing style. The plot was very entertaining. Did not like the romance at all, but I know that Anna Huang is a very well-loved author and this was a very easy read for me, so I'm open to continuing. This could be one that falls by the wayside though, because I am going to be hauling the physical edition and I'm going to be relying on Kindle Unlimited to continue with this one. I think the last of the completed series, I'm pretty sure that this is completed, is the Legends of Thesmar series by Helen Shara, with the first book being Blood and Steel. So this one is set in a world where there is a prophecy that a woman who wields a blade is going to bring about the end of days. So because of that, they have stopped allowing women to train in the warrior academy, but it's all our main character has ever wanted. Because it's forbidden, it's not something she should be doing, but she gains the favor of a member of royalty, which allows her to train amongst the warriors. And this one is a romantic series, with our love interest being this big, burly, stoic warrior that wants nothing to do with our main character, but is inexplicably drawn to her, even though relationships between warriors and the people they're training is forbidden. So I did very much enjoy this one. It's not the best romantic series I've ever read, but it is very much in line with series I have read and enjoyed in the past, like the Claire Sager books that I've read. I think the first one's like A Touch of Poison, maybe. I think that's book 2. I can never remember what book 1 in that series is called. There's also like From Blood and Ash, it has that kind of vibe to it. So I enjoyed it because of that, and I'm definitely excited to see how the series develops in the future. So moving on to the ones that are not complete, that are still currently publishing, I will start with the ones that I don't own so that I actually remember to include them. And the first one of those is the Beast of Brier series by Elizabeth Helen. This one came as a great surprise to me when I enjoyed it, because it is a reverse harem or a why choose romance, which traditionally I really do not enjoy. This is the first one that I've read that I've even remotely enjoyed. This one is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and it is following a woman from our world who has a boyfriend who is very emotionally abusive and manipulative. He has left, I think he went to college, but he's now come back and he's trying to be in a relationship with her again, and he makes her feel really, really bad about herself. So one day her father goes missing and she crawls through this bush into the lands of the Fae, where she stumbles across this castle that is surrounded by thorns, and when she enters she finds these 4 Fae princes that have been cursed, and she kind of takes it upon herself to help them out during her stay in this castle. And while she's there, obviously she meets men who make her feel good about herself in a way that she has never experienced in a romantic relationship in the past. Now typically I don't like reverse harem and why choose romances because it's a case of too many cooks spoil the broth for me. I like slow burn, I like really intricate character development, and I feel like when you have all of these men, I think there's 5 men in this series, that you can't really give each of them the attention that they need to become appealing to me. However, the thing that I actually really liked this, aside from the addictive writing style, is that it doesn't go from 0 to 100 in book 1. Her relationship develops more romantically with some of them, it develops into a friendship with some of them, and it's not straight from we've only just met to I want to be with you forever within the course of the first book. So I did not keep my physical copy of this. I'm not that invested in this series, but if I could get ebook copies of this in the future easily, then I may consider continuing on. The last one that I don't own is Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinnerman. For the first half of the year I read the first book in this series, which is Dungeon Crawler Carl, and I have since read the second book, which is called Doomsday Scenario. This one is a lit RPG following a man called Carl whose girlfriend is cheating on him. He's discovered this while she's on a trip, and because she does not respect their relationship relationship, he has decided that he does not respect their apartment. So he started smoking inside, but he's cracking the window so that the smoke doesn't bother her cat, which is this big fluffy like prize winning Persian. And one day out of nowhere, when he's having a cigarette at 2 in the morning, the cat jumps out the window. So he heads out into a winter storm wearing just underpants, a leather jacket and pink Crocs, and all of the buildings in the world just collapse into the ground. And this voice comes out of the ether telling him that he now has two choices. So he can survive on the surface of the earth, bearing in mind there's no shelter anymore and we are in a winter storm, or he can enter into these staircases that go underground and take part in this intergalactic game show. So Carl takes the latter option, picks up his cat, heads into the dungeon where he becomes a crawler, which is a participant in this Hunger Games style competition. This series is very much a mix of like the Hunger Games and Ready Player One for me, and I did very much enjoy the first book. It's kind of an introduction into what the series is going to be. So the first book is very much like a romp through a dungeon. What I want from this series going forward is a little bit more scope in the plot, tackling kind of the people who've orchestrated this game and the stuff going on behind it, as opposed to just participating in a game show. Next up, we have the Coven of Bones series by Harper L. Woods. So I think book 2 in this series is already released. Book 3 is released a little bit later this year. And this is one of the ones that I enjoyed, but there's things about it that I didn't love. So we'll see if I ever actually continue on with it. But first and foremost, I would like Fairy Loot editions to match my edition of the Coven before I continue on with this one. This one is following a woman who is part of a magical family that are tied to a town. So the families make up the founders of the town, and it is integral that they play a role in this town and attend this school to like hone their magic. It's just kind of like tradition, and it has that occult element to it that I really love. But our main character's mother faked her death so that herself and her family would not have to play a role in the kind of weird cultish behavior that goes on within this school and within this town. However, after the death of her mother, the main character is found by the headmaster and taken to the school to fulfill her role in this weird cult-like shit that's going on in this school. So there were things that I really enjoyed about this, mainly the occult nature of it, the cultish behavior of the members of all of these founding families, as well as the school setting. But I didn't really love the romance, which story of my life. So we'll see what happens. I currently am invested enough to continue, but we will see how long that lasts. My favorite book of the year is Heavenly Bodies by Amani Eriyu. I believe that book 2 in this series is being released towards the end of the year, and it is in my anticipated releases video for the second half of the year, if you would like to check that out. But this one is a romantasy series that is set in a world that is heavily inspired by celestial bodies and the zodiac, which I was worried would be a little bit gimmicky when I went into this one. And we are following a girl who has a prophecy surrounding her that says that she's going to fall in love with a star and it will cause the death of both of them. So one of the stars of this world, which are like magical immortal creatures, finds out about this prophecy and comes to this girl's kingdom, kills her family, and takes it for himself. So she actually manages to escape before she's kidnapped by an enemy kingdom. She's from the Kingdom of Dark. She's kidnapped by the Kingdom of Light, and the king of the Light Kingdom tells her that he would like her to train to take down the star before the star starts getting big ideas about seizing control for himself and turns to the neighboring kingdoms. And the benefit for her is that she will be able to get revenge for the death of her family. So she reluctantly agrees and she starts training alongside the prince of this kingdom, who, because he is the prince of an enemy kingdom to hers, she believes is a horrible guy like his father. But it turns out that maybe she was wrong. While I thought that the world in here was going to be gimmicky, I think that Amani Eriyu did a very good job of making it feel like a fully fleshed out 3D world, which I loved. And I also I did love the romance in this one, which was a slow burn, and then the whole thing had a bunch of plot twists that I didn't see coming, which was just the cherry on the cake for me. I also started the Fire in the Sky series by Sophie Jordan. I think the sequel to this is coming out later this year, and this one is following the whipping girl to the princesses of a royal line. So if they do anything bad, she is punished for it. She's whipped, like her food is withheld, she's put in isolation to teach the princesses a lesson. It doesn't really work, but one day the leader of the warriors responsible for for protecting the border of this kingdom, comes to the palace and says to the king that he's sick of being shunned, he's sick of his people being treated badly when they perform such an important service for the realm. So he would like to marry one of the king's daughters, one of the princesses, as a token of gratitude for all the work that these warriors do, who are like regarded as savages. So the king thinks he's being clever, and he sends the whipping girl to marry the warrior because she is technically part of his family. She's been raised as one of his daughters. However, she obviously isn't, and she's also been treated pretty badly in the household as well. This also has dragons in it, which form a big part of the magic and the plot of this world, and it reminded me very much of like a Daenerys Khal Drogo style relationship, which I think is a little bit different to romancy that I typically read. And once again, like with Godkiller, I thought that considering it was such a short book, it did a really good job with the atmosphere and the world building. I also started I don't know if this series is called This Woven Kingdom, by Tahara Mafi. This one is following a girl who is the heir to a kingdom of jinn. This world is one that is shared by jinn and humans, and the humans have given the jinn equality, or it's a facade, it's not real. So the jinn are not allowed to use their abilities at all, and in return they can live amongst humans, but they're often treated very badly and looked down upon as well. And our main character is the heir to a jinn kingdom that has fallen. So she is making her own way through this world. She is currently the servant to an affluent household, and on the side she's also making dresses, hoping to save a little bit of money to make a better life for herself. Now one day she is accosted by a thief who she convinces to leave her alone, and while this is happening, the prince of the kingdom is watching her, and he thinks her behavior is super suspicious, so he starts to look into her, and the more he observes her, the more infatuated he becomes, which does become a problem when he finds out who she is and that she may be a very real threat to his kingdom. So at this point I've only read book 1, but as I love the Illumicrate edition so much, I did pick up book 2 and 3 of this series, and I think it's going to be 5 books in total, with book 4 I think releasing at some point this year. And then the last series we're going to be talking about in this video is the Note of the Gods series by Piper CJ, which I really enjoyed this first book, The Deer and the Dragon. I do also currently own book 2, which I have not gotten to yet, and I don't think I know how long this series is going to be, but honestly I've heard some terrible things about Piper CJ, so I went into this truly expecting the worst, and I was actually surprised. Now it does feel a little bit self-inserty because our main character in here is this badass author with a don't give a fuck attitude who made a ton of money as a sex worker, and now she lives quite a reclusive life where she's settled down to write these books. She writes a very popular fantasy series where each book in the series follows a different pantheon of gods, and since she was young she has been followed by this man. And she doesn't think this man is real, she thinks he's an imaginary friend, and their relationship, as he's kind of watched over her entire life, turned from friendship to something a little bit more romantic, but she is convinced that she's going mad because madness runs in her family and that this man is not real. And one day he disappears forever, and she realizes that he's a lot realer than she ever thought when she is approached by one of the gods from the Norse pantheon who tells her that this man is real and gods are real, and not just gods, like all of the gods, like all of the pantheons are all real, and if she ever wants to see this guy that she's in love with again, then she's going to have to go and save him. It's even more interesting that I enjoyed this because it strays into the territory of like urban fantasy, which I also typically don't enjoy, so I don't know what it was about this one that has me so hooked, but I actually think about it pretty regularly, and I am still very much excited to continue on with this series. So I'm pretty sure that that one was the last of the 18 series that I need to finish by the end of the year. I know I'm not going to finish them by the end of the year, but if I could knock a few off, maybe a quarter of them, maybe if I could actually finish some series, because I'm pretty sure I've only genuinely finished 2 series so far this year. One of them was a duology, and one of them was, to be fair, like a 14 book adult epic fantasy series. I'm still real proud of the fact that I finished Wheel of Time, and you cannot take that away from me. But I would like to finish some more series. Some of them are a given, like my book club series will definitely be done by the end of the year, but I would also like to rack up a few more as well and start to make a little bit of progress in the series that I've started that are completed that I can read in their entirety. And I actually made a video recently about 10 series series that I have started in the past where I'm going to reread book 1 and then hopefully move through the rest of the series now that I have a little bit more time to prioritize them with Wheel of Time out of the way. But down in my comments, let me know if you've read any of these series, what you thought of them, but also let me know one series that you would like to finish by the end of the year. If you would like to let me know that you were here but you don't feel like you have anything to say, leave me a dragon emoji for The Deer and the Dragon by Piper CJ. But aside from that, guys, thank you so much for tuning into my mid-year content for 2025, and please don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. If you head into my description box, you'll find a link to my Goodreads, my Instagram, and my Patreon if you want to follow me on any of those. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you will go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.